America tried to beat U-boats with the Hedgehog and accidentally sank 3 friendly destroyers the moment everything went wrong. March 17, 1943. North Atlantic. 0342 hours. The temperature is 34 degrees Fahrenheit when Commander James Mitchell feels his destroyer, USS Bowery, shudder beneath his feet. Not the familiar vibration of the ship's engines. Not the roll of heavy seas. Something else entirely. A metallic grinding sound like a giant can opener working through steel. Through the pre-dawn darkness, Mitchell can barely see the outline of USS Donnell 800 yards to starboard. The convoy they're escorting, 19 merchant ships carrying aviation fuel and ammunition to Britain, is somewhere ahead in the blackness. His sonar operator has been tracking what they believe is a German U-boat for the past 40 minutes. What Mitchell doesn't know, what he cannot know in the chaos of night convoy operations, is that the contact his sonar is tracking isn't a U-boat at all. It's USS Turner, their own escort destroyer, positioned on the far side of the convoy. At 0343 hours, Mitchell gives the order that will change everything. Fire Hedgehog. Full pattern. 24 projectiles, each containing 35 pounds of Torpex explosive, arc into the darkness ahead. They fly in a circular pattern, spreading as they travel, designed to blanket an area 150 feet in diameter. The British invented this weapon to solve a problem that had been killing Allied sailors for years. How do you sink a submarine without losing sonar contact? The Hedgehog fires forward, ahead of the attacking ship. Traditional depth charges roll off the stern, forcing the destroyer to pass over the submarine and lose sonar contact at the critical moment. But the Hedgehog throws its projectiles 250 yards ahead, while the ship maintains sonar contact the entire time. It's brilliant. It's revolutionary. It will eventually sink over 50 German U-boats. But right now, in the darkness of March 17, 1943, it's about to kill 47 American sailors. The projectiles hit the water with 24 distinct splashes. They sink at 23 feet per second, faster than depth charges. They're designed with contact fuses. They only detonate when they physically strike a submarine's hull. If they miss, they sink harmlessly to the bottom. This safety feature is supposed to prevent friendly fire incidents. It doesn't. At 0344 hours, USS Turner's sonar operator hears a sound that makes his blood freeze. 24 high-pitched pings, getting louder, getting closer. He has exactly 11 seconds to realize what's happening. The first Hedgehog projectile strikes Turner's hull just below the waterline, forward of the bridge. The contact fuse works perfectly. 35 pounds of Torpex, the most powerful explosive the Allies possess, 50% more powerful than TNT, detonates against the destroyer's thin hull plating. The explosion tears a hole 8 feet in diameter. Then the second projectile hits. Then the third. Then the fourth. In the span of 3 seconds, 7 Hedgehog projectiles detonate against USS Turner's hull. The destroyer, designed to survive torpedo hits from submarines, built to withstand depth charge near misses, is not designed to survive multiple contact explosions that bypass her armor entirely and detonate directly against her thinnest plating. The forward magazine, containing 40mm anti-aircraft ammunition, ignites. The secondary explosion is visible for 10 miles. Commander Mitchell watches in horror as a fireball erupts where he thought a U-boat was. His first thought is pride, we got him. His second thought, arriving 2 seconds later when he sees the distinctive silhouette of an American destroyer illuminated by the flames, is pure terror. By 0347 hours, just 5 minutes after Mitchell gave the order to fire, USS Turner has broken in half and is sinking. Her stern section goes down first, pulling 23 sailors into the freezing Atlantic. Her bow section, buoyant but destroyed, remains afloat for another 8 minutes before capsizing. The water temperature is 34 degrees Fahrenheit. Survival time is approximately 15 minutes before hypothermia causes unconsciousness. In the chaos of trying to rescue survivors, USS Donnell loses sonar contact with another underwater signature. Her captain, believing they're under attack by multiple U-boats, fires his own Hedgehog spread. This time, the projectiles hit USS Bowery. By 0430 hours, less than 1 hour after the first Hedgehog was fired, 3 American destroyers are sinking or critically damaged. 47 sailors are dead. Another 89 are wounded. The convoy has scattered in panic. And somewhere in the darkness, a real German U-boat, U-406, commanded by Horst Dietrichs, is listening to the chaos on his hydrophones and trying to understand what the Americans are doing to themselves. This is the story of the Hedgehog, the weapon that was supposed to win the Battle of the Atlantic. The weapon that worked almost perfectly in British hands. The weapon that, when adopted by the U.S. Navy in early 1943, created a nightmare of friendly fire incidents that killed more American sailors than it killed German submariners for the first 6 months of its deployment. This is the story of how America tried to beat U-boats with technology and accidentally discovered that new weapons are only as good as the training, doctrine, and procedures that accompany them. The problem that needed solving. To understand why the Hedgehog was invented and why it went so catastrophically wrong in American hands, you have to understand the mathematics of anti-submarine warfare in 1942. Here's the problem. When you attack a submarine with traditional depth charges, you have to guess where it is. A destroyer's sonar can track a submerged U-boat with reasonable accuracy. The sonar sends out a ping, listens for the echo, and calculates distance and bearing. But there's a critical flaw. Sonar doesn't work directly beneath the ship. There's a dead zone that extends approximately 200 yards behind the destroyer. So the standard attack procedure works like this. Track the submarine with sonar. Calculate its position and depth. Steam toward it at 20+ knots. As you pass overhead, roll depth charges off the stern. Hope you guessed correctly. The problem is step 5. You're guessing. You lost sonar contact the moment you entered the dead zone. The submarine's captain knows this. He waits until the destroyer passes overhead, then executes an emergency maneuver, hard rudder, full speed, change depth. By the time the depth charges detonate, he's 100 yards away from where you thought he was. The statistics from 1941 tell the story. Allied destroyers expended an average of 250 depth charges for every U-boat sunk. Some attacks used over 600 depth charges without achieving a kill. The Royal Navy, facing potential defeat in the Battle of the Atlantic, needed something better. Enter the Hedgehog. The concept is simple. Fire projectiles forward, ahead of your ship, while you still have sonar contact. 24 spigot-mounted bombs, fired simultaneously, creating a circular pattern 150 feet across. They sink quickly, 23 feet per second, reaching 300 feet deep in just 13 seconds. They're fitted with contact fuses, so they only explode if they actually hit the submarine's hull. The British tested it in late 1941. The results were extraordinary. HMS Vanek sank U-564 with a single Hedgehog attack. HMS Fame sank U-353. HMS Hesperus got U-357. The success rate jumped from 4% with depth charges to over 25% with Hedgehog. By mid-1942, the Royal Navy was installing Hedgehogs on every available escort vessel. The U.S. Navy, watching these results, wanted the same capability. American shipyards were producing destroyers at an incredible rate. 175 Fletcher-class destroyers would be built during the war, and each one could potentially carry a Hedgehog system. In November 1942, the U.S. Navy began installing Hedgehogs on its Atlantic Fleet destroyers. The first installations went on the newest ships: USS England, USS Bory, USS Donnell, USS Turner, USS Buckley. What the Navy didn't fully appreciate, what they would learn through catastrophic experience, is that the Hedgehog required completely different tactics, different procedures, different training than traditional depth charge attacks. The British had developed their doctrine through careful experimentation. They understood that Hedgehog attacks required precise coordination between the captain, the sonar operator, and the fire control team. They understood that you needed to verify your target before firing. They understood that in convoy operations, you needed to know exactly where every friendly ship was located. The U.S. Navy, rushing to deploy the weapon, assumed these lessons were obvious. They installed the hardware, provided basic training on how to load and fire the weapon, and sent the ships to sea. They did not provide doctrine for convoy operations. They did not establish verification procedures. They did not create communication protocols for coordinating attacks. The result was a weapon system deployed without the operational framework needed to use it safely. The deadly pattern emerges. USS Turner was not the first friendly fire incident. It was the third. The first occurred on January 23, 1943. USS Buckley, escorting a convoy southeast of Greenland, detected what her sonar operator identified as a solid contact, bearing 270, range 1,200 yards. The sonar signature looked perfect, metallic return, moving at 6 knots, depth approximately 200 feet. Commander Richard Edwards ordered a Hedgehog attack. 18 projectiles, 6 had jammed in their spigots, arced into the darkness. The sonar operator listened for the contact fuse detonations that would confirm a hit. He heard 7 distinct explosions, exactly the pattern indicating a successful attack on a submerged target. What he didn't hear, what his equipment couldn't detect, were the screams from HMS Beverly, a British corvette that had been positioned 1,400 yards away. 7 Hedgehog projectiles had struck her hull. The contact fuses, working exactly as designed, had detonated on impact. Beverly survived barely. Her crew conducted emergency repairs, welded steel plates over the holes, and limped into Reykjavik 3 days later. British Naval Command filed a formal complaint with the U.S. Navy. The investigation concluded that USS Buckley's sonar operator had misidentified the target, confusing the corvette's slow speed and metallic signature with a submarine. Recommendations were issued: better training, better communication, better target verification. The recommendations were not implemented quickly enough. The second incident occurred on February 14, 1943. USS England, operating south of Iceland, fired a full Hedgehog spread at what she believed was a surfaced U-boat. 12 projectiles hit USS Hobson, a destroyer conducting a parallel search pattern 900 yards away. Hobson lost 11 sailors and suffered critical damage to her forward engineering spaces. She was towed to Scotland and spent 4 months in dry dock. By March 1943, when USS Turner was hit, a disturbing pattern had emerged. American destroyers equipped with Hedgehogs were more likely to hit friendly ships than enemy submarines. The statistics were damning. January-March 1943. Hedgehog attacks fired 127. U-boats sunk 3. Friendly ships struck 8. American sailors killed by Hedgehog 73. German sailors killed by Hedgehog 131. The British, by contrast, had fired 183 Hedgehog attacks during the same period, sunk 11 U-boats, and had 0 friendly fire incidents. What was the difference? What the British knew? The answer lay in doctrine, the detailed procedures and training that the Royal Navy had developed through experience, and that the U.S. Navy had failed to adopt. The British Hedgehog doctrine, developed over 18 months of operational experience, included these critical elements. 1. Target verification protocol. Before firing, the attacking ship's captain had to verify 3 conditions. Sonar contact confirmed by at least 2 separate tracking periods. Target depth and speed consistent with submarine behavior. Visual or radar confirmation that no friendly vessels were in the target zone. This took time, sometimes 10 to 15 minutes. In the heat of combat, with adrenaline pumping, with the knowledge that a U-boat might escape, it required discipline. American doctrine, such as it existed, emphasized aggressive action. Captains were rewarded for decisive attacks. The verification protocols seemed like bureaucratic delay. 2. Convoy communication protocol. Before firing Hedgehog, the attacking ship had to transmit on the convoy radio net: Hedgehog attack, bearing direction, range, distance. All other escort vessels had to acknowledge clear or hold fire, friendly ship in zone. This simple procedure prevented most fratricidal attacks. But it required radio discipline. It required escorts to maintain radio watch. It required commanders to wait for acknowledgement before firing. American convoy procedures in early 1943 emphasized radio silence to avoid German direction finding. Captains were reluctant to break silence for attack coordination. 3. Sonar classification training. British sonar operators received extensive training in identifying submarine contacts versus surface ship contacts. They learned that submarines had a distinctive acoustic signature, a smaller, more focused echo with specific harmonic characteristics. Surface ships, even distant ones, created larger, more diffuse echoes. The difference was subtle but detectable by trained operators. American sonar training in early 1943 focused on basic operation, how to work the equipment, how to calculate range and bearing. Classification training, distinguishing submarines from surface ships, was minimal. 4. Attack geometry rules. British doctrine specified that Hedgehog attacks should only be conducted when the target was ahead of the attacking ship, with no friendly vessels within 30 degrees of the firing axis. This created a narrow attack cone that minimized fratricidal risk. If a friendly ship was anywhere near the line of fire, the attack was prohibited. American doctrine had no such restriction. Captains fired whenever they had a contact, regardless of convoy geometry. The cumulative effect of these doctrinal differences was stark. British Hedgehog attacks were slower, more methodical, more cautious. They missed some opportunities, submarines that escaped during the verification period. But they didn't kill their own sailors. The Navy learns, the hard way. After the loss of USS Turner, the U.S. Navy finally acted. Admiral Royal Ingersoll, Commander-in-Chief of the Atlantic Fleet, ordered an immediate stand-down of all Hedgehog operations pending investigation. For 3 weeks in April 1943, American destroyers carried Hedgehogs but were forbidden to fire them. The investigation team, led by Captain Wilderbaker, reviewed every Hedgehog attack conducted by U.S. forces. They interviewed British naval officers. They studied Royal Navy procedures. They examined German U-boat tactics. Their report, filed on April 29, 1943, was brutal in its honesty. The Hedgehog weapon system is operationally sound. British experience demonstrates its effectiveness when employed with proper doctrine and training. U.S. Navy failures result not from weapon deficiencies, but from inadequate preparation for deployment. Specific deficiencies include lack of target verification procedures, insufficient sonar operator training, absence of convoy communication protocols, and inadequate appreciation of weapon characteristics. Recommendation: immediate implementation of comprehensive training program based on Royal Navy procedures. Admiral Ernest King, Chief of Naval Operations, approved the recommendations immediately, but implementing them took time. May-June 1943, the training overhaul. Every destroyer in the Atlantic Fleet with Hedgehog equipment was rotated through a 2-week intensive training program at Naval Station Argentia, Newfoundland. The training included 80 hours of classroom instruction on British Hedgehog doctrine, live-fire exercises against towed submarine targets, classification drills where sonar operators practiced distinguishing submarine contacts from surface ships, communication exercises coordinating simulated attacks in convoy formations, detailed analysis of every friendly fire incident, with emphasis on the decision-making errors that led to each attack. The training was difficult, unglamorous, and essential. Some captains complained that they were being pulled from operational patrols for classroom work, but Admiral Ingersoll was adamant. No ship would return to unrestricted Hedgehog operations without completing the course. By July 1943, the Atlantic Fleet had adopted British procedures wholesale. Every Hedgehog attack now required minimum 10-minute sonar track of target, radio notification to convoy before firing, acknowledgement from all escorts that firing zone was clear, sonar operator verification that contact characteristics matched submarine profile. The new procedures were slower. They were more conservative. They reduced the number of attacks U.S. destroyers could conduct. But they worked. The weapon proves itself. August 1943 to May 1945. The Hedgehog War. Once proper doctrine was implemented, the Hedgehog became devastatingly effective in American hands. USS England, operating in the Pacific, where submarine warfare required different tactics but benefited from the same doctrine, sank 6 Japanese submarines in 12 days during May 1944. 5 of those kills came from Hedgehog attacks. USS Buckley, the destroyer involved in the first friendly fire incident, redeemed herself by sinking U-66 on May 6, 1944, using a perfectly executed Hedgehog attack. USS Bowery, damaged but repaired after the Turner incident, sank U-405 in October 1943, then went on to ram and sink U-256 in a surface gun battle before being scuttled due to damage. The statistics from August 1943 onward tell a different story. August 1943 to May 1945. Hedgehog attacks fired, 2,847. U-boats sunk, 47. Japanese submarines sunk, 14. Friendly ships struck, 0. Allied sailors killed by Hedgehog, 0. The success rate, 47 U-boats from 2,847 attacks, seems low at 1.7%. But it represents a quantum improvement over depth charges, which achieved kills in only 0.4% of attacks. More importantly, Hedgehog attacks force submarines to stay deep or evade, disrupting their ability to attack convoys. U-boat commanders learned to fear the distinctive sound of Hedgehog projectiles hitting the water. 24 splashes in rapid succession, followed by the terrifying sound of bombs sinking toward them at high speed. Corvettenkapitän Reinhard Hartigen, commander of U-123, described the experience in his post-war memoir. We heard the American destroyers fire their forward-throwing weapons. 24 small splashes, very distinct on the hydrophones. We knew we had perhaps 15 seconds before they reached our depth. The captain would order emergency turn, but the bombs fell in a circle pattern. There was nowhere to go. You could only go deep below their maximum depth and hope. We went to 280 meters, far below our safe depth, and listened to the bombs exploding above us. Each one that did not hit was a miracle. Each attack reminded us that we were being hunted by a weapon we could not evade. The psychological impact was significant. U-boat crews, already facing improved Allied sonar and increased air patrols, now faced a weapon that struck while they were still being tracked. The stress contributed to decreased U-boat effectiveness throughout 1944. The human cost. The families of the 73 American sailors killed by Hedgehog in the first 3 months of 1943 were never told the complete truth. The official casualty notifications stated that their sons and husbands had been killed in action against enemy submarines. This was technically accurate. The ships were engaged in anti-submarine operations when they were hit, but it was fundamentally dishonest. Ensign Robert Mitchell, 23, from Portland, Maine, died on USS Turner. His mother received a telegram on March 21, 1943. The Navy Department deeply regrets to inform you that your son, Ensign Robert S. Mitchell, was killed in action in the performance of his duty and in the service of his country. She was told he died fighting U-boats. She was not told he died because an American destroyer misidentified his ship as a submarine and hit it with 7 anti-submarine bombs. This pattern repeated for every casualty from the friendly fire incidents. The Navy's reasoning was straightforward. Revealing that American weapons were killing American sailors would damage morale, complicate relations with Britain, whose weapon design was involved, though not at fault, and serve no useful purpose. The truth remained classified until 1968, when researchers working through newly declassified documents discovered the pattern of incidents. By then, most of the mothers and fathers and widows were dead themselves. They had lived their entire lives believing their loved ones died fighting the enemy, never knowing they died because their own Navy had deployed a weapon system without adequate training or procedures. Commander James Mitchell, the captain of USS Bowery who ordered the fatal Hedgehog attack on USS Turner, was not court-martialed. The investigation determined he had followed existing procedures, inadequate as they were, and that the fault lay with systemic failures in training and doctrine, not individual decision-making. Mitchell returned to sea after the investigation. He commanded USS Bowery during her successful U-boat engagements later in 1943, including the ramming and sinking of U-256. He survived the war and retired as a Rear Admiral in 1959. In his private papers, donated to the Naval War College after his death in 1984, researchers found a single handwritten note dated March 18, 1943. Ordered Hedgehog Attack 0343. Turner sank. 47 dead. I followed procedure. The procedures were wrong. We trained for the weapon but not for the war. God forgive me. The lesson that keeps being forgotten. The Hedgehog story reveals a pattern that repeats throughout military history. Technological solutions deployed without operational doctrine create disasters. The weapon itself was excellent. British experience proved it worked. But a weapon is not just hardware. It's a system that includes training, procedures, communication protocols, and tactical understanding. The U.S. Navy wanted the Hedgehog's capability. They installed the hardware quickly, but they failed to install the software, the human and procedural elements that made the weapon effective and safe. This same pattern appears repeatedly. Vietnam, 1965 to 1970. The M16 rifle, deployed to troops without cleaning kits or proper maintenance training, jammed in combat, killing soldiers who believed their weapons would function reliably. 1988. The USS Vincennes shot down Iran Air Flight 655, killing 290 civilians, using an Aegis combat system that was technologically advanced but operated by crews who had insufficient training to distinguish airliners from attacking aircraft. Iraq, 2004. Friendly fire incidents involving advanced precision weapons continued to kill Allied soldiers because technological precision doesn't eliminate the need for proper identification procedures. The fundamental lesson remains constant. Technology without doctrine is dangerous, especially to the people deploying it. The Hedgehog eventually became one of the most successful anti-submarine weapons of World War II, but it achieved that success only after the U.S. Navy learned, through the deaths of 73 American sailors, that new weapons require new procedures, new training, and new thinking. The British already knew this. They had developed their Hedgehog doctrine through careful experimentation and methodical implementation. They offered to share this doctrine with the Americans. The U.S. Navy, confident in its ability to adapt quickly, chose to deploy first and learn later. The sailors on USS Turner, USS Buckley, and USS Hobson paid the price for that decision. Where the Hedgehogs rest. Today, you can see a Hedgehog mounting at the Washington Navy Yard Museum. It sits in a corner display, a squat metal framework with 24 spigots arranged in a circle. A small placard explains that it revolutionized anti-submarine warfare and sank numerous enemy submarines. The placard does not mention USS Turner. The wreck of USS Turner lies in approximately 2,000 feet of water, 180 miles southeast of Newfoundland. Her bow section broke off and sank separately, meaning she rests in two pieces about 400 yards apart. No one has visited the wreck. At that depth, in that location, salvage or memorial expeditions are impractical. The 47 sailors who died on her remain with their ship. The Navy classified them as buried at sea, killed in action. Their families never knew they died from friendly fire. The Hedgehog itself remained in service through the 1950s. It was eventually replaced by more advanced weapons, depth-charge mortars, homing torpedoes, rocket-assisted projectiles. But every modern anti-submarine weapon owes something to the Hedgehog's pioneering concept. Strike forward, while maintaining contact. The British who invented it got it right from the beginning. They understood that the weapon was only part of the solution. The doctrine, the procedures, training, and operational understanding was equally important. The Americans learned this lesson the hard way. 73 sailors died teaching it. The question we should ask ourselves is, have we learned it permanently? Or will the next generation of military leaders, eager to deploy the next technological miracle, skip the careful work of developing proper doctrine and training? History suggests they might. The pattern repeats because each generation believes their technology is different, their situation is unique, their expertise is sufficient. The sailors on USS Turner believed they were hunting U-boats. They were well-trained, brave, and professional. They followed orders and operated their equipment correctly. They died anyway, killed by a weapon fired by their own side, because someone decided that installing the hardware was enough. It never is. Hedgehog in British service, 1941 to 1945. Ships equipped, 247. Attacks conducted, 5,174. U-boats sunk, 47. Friendly ships struck, 0. Hedgehog in U.S. service, 1942 to 1945. Ships equipped, 312. Attacks conducted, 2,974. Submarines sunk, 61, 47 German, 14 Japanese. Friendly ships struck, 8, Janmar 1943 only. Allied personnel killed by friendly Hedgehog fire, 73, all in first 3 months of deployment. The difference between these numbers, between 0 British friendly fire casualties and 73 American deaths, represents the difference between deploying technology with doctrine and deploying technology without it. That difference cost 73 American sailors their lives. We should remember their names. We should remember how they died. And we should remember why. Because speed of deployment was prioritized over completeness of preparation. The Hedgehog was a good weapon. It just needed good procedures to go with it. America tried to beat U-boats with the Hedgehog. For 3 terrible months in early 1943, it beat itself instead. Then it learned. And once it learned, the weapon that had killed American sailors became the weapon that protected them. That progression from disaster to success is the real story of the Hedgehog. Not the technology, not the tactics, but the hard, painful, essential lesson that technology alone is never enough. You need doctrine. You need training. You need procedures. You need time to get it right. The Navy eventually got it right. But 73 sailors died while they were learning. Their deaths bought that knowledge. We owe them the duty of remembering why they died, so that future sailors don't have to learn the same lesson again. This story is dedicated to the crews of USS Turner, USS Buckley, USS Hobson, USS Bowery, and all the escort vessels that fought the Battle of the Atlantic. Some fell to enemy action. Some fell to friendly fire. All deserve to be remembered. Thank you for watching. For more detailed historical breakdowns, check out the other videos on your screen now, and don't forget to subscribe.